Welcome, my beloved families. Get ready to dive into Danielle's emotional journey. A story of scars, self-discovery, and a love that sees beyond appearances. Join us as we explore a tale of courage, resilience, and the beauty of being truly seen. Danielle Carter had learned to live with the stares. They were part of her daily existence. Now unwanted companions she could neither ignore nor entirely escape. When she walked into a grocery store, she felt them before she saw them, eyes that lingered just a little too long, brows furrowed with pity or curiosity, children's wide-eyed innocence turning into awkward questions that parents shushed with tight, embarrassed smiles. She'd been 16 when it happened. A small kitchen fire that should have been nothing more. Then a scare had erupted into a nightmare. The flames had caught her dress, and by the time her father managed to smother them, the damage had been done. Half her face, her left side, was marred with thick, twisting scars. Her once smooth skin had been replaced by a patchwork of melted flesh, a map of pain and survival. The doctors had saved her life. They told her she was lucky. Danielle knew they meant well, but in the months that followed, she realized luck was a relative thing. She was alive, yes, but the life she returned to was nothing like the one she'd left behind. In high school, beauty was currency, and she'd gone from being a girl who occasionally caught boys' glances to someone they avoided or worse, mocked. Two-Face, they whispered behind her back. One boy she had a crush on flinched the first time he saw her after the accident. That memory alone could still make her stomach tighten. 12 years later, she had built a quiet life for herself, safe from the cruel unpredictability of people. She lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment, above a laundromat in the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. The walls were lined with her artwork, paintings filled with color and emotion. It was in her art that she could express what words failed to capture. Danielle worked at a local bookstore, a cozy little place called the Page Turner. She liked the smell of old paper and coffee from the cafe next door. The customers were usually kind, or at least too preoccupied with finding their next read to focus on her face. It was one of the few public spaces where she felt almost invisible, and for her, that was a blessing. Her routine was simple. Wake up early, make tea, and paint before work. The mornings were her sacred time. Sunlight streamed through the window, spilling onto the easel, where her current piece waited, an stormy seascape that mirrored her own restless emotions. She painted with headphones on, music filling the room like a soft cocoon, shutting out the world beyond her walls. But no matter how peaceful her mornings were, the outside world always had a way of reminding her where she stood. One Thursday, as she walked home from work, a group of young men stood outside a bar on the corner. They were laughing loudly, the kind of laughter that had an edge to it. She kept her head down, quickened her pace, and prayed to slip past unnoticed. "Hey, sweetheart," one of them called out. She didn't respond. Another voice followed. "What's the matter? Too ugly to smile?" The words landed like a slap, though Danielle kept walking, her face burning. She'd learned not to give them the satisfaction of a reaction, but it didn't stop the ache in her chest. She got home, locked the door, and stood in the silence, letting the weight of it settle before she forced herself to breathe it out. That night she painted until her hands ached. The strokes were harsh, angry, deep reds and blacks spilling across the canvas. Art was her release, her way of bleeding without wounds. The next morning, she received an email from the Art for Hearts Foundation. She'd submitted her work to their charity auction months ago, convinced she'd never hear back. But there it was. "We are pleased to invite you to showcase your work at our annual gala." Danielle stared at the screen. She should have been thrilled. This was an opportunity most artists dreamed of. But the thought of standing in a room full of strangers, of being the center of attention in any way, sent her stomach into knots. She pictured the stares, the whispers, the elegant dresses and perfect faces, and her, the scarred outsider. Her friend and co-worker, Tanya, noticed her mood shift that day at the bookstore. "What's up? You've been quiet more than usual, I mean." Danielle hesitated, then told her about the email. "Are you kidding me? That's amazing. You have to go." "I don't know," Danielle trailed off, picking at the edge of a book cover. "It's not like anyone wants to see me. They'll be there for the art, not me." "Exactly," Tanya said, crossing her arms. "They'll be there for your art, and your art is incredible. "You deserve this, Danielle." She wanted to believe that, but self-doubt was a stubborn shadow that clung to her no matter how far she tried to walk. That evening she stood in front of her bathroom mirror. Her hair was long and thick, the perfect curtain to hide behind. She brushed it forward, covering the left side of her face, then pulled it back again. The scar was as much a part of her as her dark brown eyes or the small birthmark near her chin. Still, she had never learned to see beauty in it. The gala was in 2 weeks. That meant 2 weeks of wrestling with herself, 2 weeks of deciding whether she was brave enough to step into a world that had always shut her out. That night, lying in bed, Danielle imagined what it would be like if she went. She pictured the large, glittering ballroom, the sound of clinking glasses, the soft hum of music. She pictured standing by her paintings, explaining her work to strangers. She also pictured someone asking what happened to her face. She rolled onto her side, staring at the canvas propped against the wall. Maybe Tanya was right. Maybe it was time. Not because she was ready to face the world, but because she was tired of hiding from it. And so, with a deep breath, she opened her laptop, typed her RSVP, and hit send. 2 weeks later, she would find herself in that glittering ballroom. And somewhere in that room, she would meet Matthew Sterling, the man who would look at her not with pity, not with curiosity, but with something she had almost forgotten how to recognize. The night of the gala arrived faster than Danielle expected. The past 2 weeks had been a haze of second-guessing, half-hearted attempts at preparing and convincing herself she could still back out. But she didn't. Tanya insisted on helping her get ready. No arguments, she'd said, barging into Danielle's apartment that afternoon with a garment, bag and a box of makeup. The dress was simple yet elegant, a floor-length black gown with a soft neckline and sleeves that grazed her wrists. Classic, timeless, no one can go wrong with black, Tanya had said with a wink. She styled Danielle's hair so that it framed her face without hiding it completely. Danielle stared at herself in the mirror. The scars were still there, etched across the left side of her face like a permanent story she never asked to tell. But for once, she didn't look like someone trying to disappear. The gala was held in the Sterling Grand Hotel, a towering building of glass and light in the heart of the city. As the taxi pulled up, her stomach tightened. The marble entrance gleamed under golden lights, and the sound of laughter and music floated out from the wide-open doors. She clutched her small black clutch tighter. "It's just an art show," she whispered to herself. "You're here for the paintings, nothing else." Inside, the ballroom was breathtaking. High ceilings with crystal chandeliers, tables draped in white linen, and a stage at the far end for the auction. Waiters in crisp uniforms weaved through the crowd with trays of champagne. The walls were lined with framed artwork, each piece illuminated by a soft spotlight. Danielle found her paintings displayed near the center. Seeing them there, surrounded by so much beauty and opulence, made her heart swell with pride. For a moment she forgot her nerves, and that was when she heard the voice. Extraordinary, she turned. A tall man stood beside her, gazing at her painting with genuine admiration. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his dark blonde hair neatly styled, his features sharp yet softened by an easy smile. "I've never seen waves painted with so much emotion," he said, his voice low and warm. "It's as if they're alive." "Thank you," Danielle said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "It's called The Tempest. I wanted it to feel turbulent but beautiful." "It does," he replied, meeting her eyes for the first time. And he didn't flinch, didn't glance away, didn't even seem to notice her scars, or if he did, they didn't register in the way she was used to. "I'm Matthew Sterling," he said, extending his hand. The name struck her. Sterling, as in the Art for Hearts Foundation, as in the man who made this event possible. "You're the host," she said, shaking his hand cautiously. "And you're Danielle Carter," he said, smiling. "I recognized your name from the artist list. I've been looking forward to meeting you." Danielle blinked. "You have?" "Yes, your portfolio stood out immediately. There's something raw in your work, something real. That's rare." She felt her cheeks warm, though she wasn't sure if it was from the compliment or the way his gaze held hers. "I appreciate that." They began to talk about art, inspiration, and the endless challenge of translating feelings onto canvas. Matthew was attentive, asking questions that showed genuine curiosity rather than polite obligation. He didn't glance over her shoulder for someone more interesting. didn't rush the conversation. When a waiter passed by with champagne, he took 2 glasses and handed her one. "To the Tempest," he said with a grin. She smiled faintly and clinked her glass against his. "To the Tempest." Over the next hour, Matthew introduced her to a few guests. Not in the half-hearted way people sometimes did when they were trying to be kind, but with genuine pride. "This is Danielle Carter," he would say. "You have to see her work. It's extraordinary." Each introduction was a small victory for Danielle. She noticed people looking at her face, yes, but they were also looking at her paintings, listening to her speak. It felt different. As the evening wore on, Matthew found his way back to her side again and again. She couldn't deny the ease she felt with him, as though they'd known each other longer than the hour they'd been speaking. At one point, they stood near the balcony, the city lights shimmering below. "Do you sell your work privately?" he asked. "I have," she said cautiously. "Why?" "I'd like to commission a piece. Something personal." Her brows lifted. "You want me to paint for you?" "Yes. Something that speaks to the idea of resilience. I think you could capture that better than anyone." Her chest tightened, not in the old way, not with dread or shame, but with something new, something like possibility. "I'll think about it," she said softly. "I hope you do," he replied, his smile warm but not insistent. By the time she left the gala, Danielle felt lighter. The evening hadn't been the disaster she'd feared. For the first time in years, someone had looked at her without seeing only her scars. And not just anyone, a man, whose world was as far from hers as the moon from the earth. Back in her apartment, she kicked off her shoes and sat on the edge of her bed. She thought about the way Matthew had spoken to her, not with pity, not with condescension, but as though she had value beyond what she'd always believed about herself. It unsettled her. It thrilled her. And deep down it scared her, because hope, she knew, was dangerous. Over the weeks that followed the gala, Matthew Sterling became a quiet but consistent presence in Danielle's life. It started with a bouquet of sunflowers delivered to the page turner, accompanied by a handwritten note, "For the artist who paints storms with sunlight." Then came the coffee runs, Matthew appearing at her studio early in the morning with 2 steaming cups. "You can't paint on an empty caffeine level," he'd say with that disarming smile. He kept his word about the commission. Something about resilience, he had said. And so she began sketching, letting her hands and heart decide what that meant. Matthew visited often to see her progress, never hovering or criticizing, just watching, listening, and asking the kind of questions that made her want to tell him more than she planned to. One rainy afternoon, as they sat in her studio sipping tea, he told her about his own life. "My parents built Sterling Enterprises from the ground up," he said. "They taught me the value of hard work. But somewhere along the way, I realized the world doesn't just need more skyscrapers. It needs more kindness. That's why I started the foundation." Danielle studied him quietly. His wealth was obvious in the way he carried himself, the cut of his suits, the ease with which he spoke of things she'd never known. But there was no arrogance in him, only a genuine warmth. And she liked him. She hated admitting it to herself. But it was there, the pull. The flicker of something she'd thought she'd buried years ago. 2 months into their friendship, Matthew invited her to an exclusive art auction at a luxury hotel. "Just come as my guest," he said. "No pressure." Danielle hesitated. She remembered the gala, how for once she'd felt seen. But she also remembered the risk of stepping into his world again. Still, she said yes. That evening she chose a soft navy dress and pinned her hair loosely, leaving just enough to frame her face. When she arrived, Matthew's expression told her she'd made the right choice. "You look perfect," he said simply, offering his arm. The auction was a glittering affair, polished marble floors, champagne flowing freely, the low hum of cultured conversation. Danielle stayed close to Matthew, grateful for his steady presence. At first, the evening went smoothly. He introduced her to a few friends and business partners, always with pride in his voice. But as the night went on, Danielle noticed a group of women watching her from across the room. Tall, elegant, dressed in shimmering gowns. Their makeup was flawless. Their hair swept into perfect styles that belonged in magazines. When Matthew stepped away to speak to an associate, Danielle found herself near the champagne table, within earshot of the women. "Who is she?" one whispered, her tone sharp with curiosity. The one with Sterling, another replied. I heard she's some artist. Poor thing, look at her face. A low chuckle. I mean, good for him for being charitable, I guess. Danielle's stomach twisted. She turned away, pretending to examine a painting on the wall. But their voices followed. Can you imagine being photographed with that? It's brave of him. The words sliced through her like glass. She set her empty glass on the table and slipped toward the exit before Matthew could see her. Outside, the night air was cool, almost biting, but it was nothing compared to the heat of humiliation burning in her chest. She walked quickly toward the street, fighting the sting in her eyes. Danielle. She turned to see Matthew striding toward her. Confusion etched across his face. What happened? Did something... I don't belong here, she said, her voice trembling. You should be with someone who fits in your world, someone beautiful. Not, don't, he said firmly, stepping closer. Don't finish that sentence. She shook her head. You don't understand. People look at me and they see the scars first. They wonder why you're with me. They think you're doing me some kind of favor. And you care what they think? His voice was calm but laced with intensity. Because I don't. Not one damn bit. Her throat tightened. It's not that simple. It is to me, he said, his gaze unwavering. Danielle, those scars, they tell a story. They tell me you've lived through fire and came out stronger. They tell me you're still standing when a lot of people would have given up. And that, his voice softened, is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She couldn't speak. Her chest felt heavy, her heart pounding in her ears. I'm not with you because I feel sorry for you, Matthew continued. I'm with you because when I look at you, I see someone extraordinary, and I'm not going to let a few shallow voices make you forget that. The tears came then, silent, uninvited, but impossible to hold back. He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers gently. Let them talk. They don't know you, I do. Something in her shifted then. The weight of years spent believing she was unworthy loosened just a fraction. And in that moment, with the city lights casting a golden glow around them, Danielle realized she wanted to believe him. The rest of the night, they spent walking through the quiet streets, talking about nothing and everything. By the time Matthew dropped her off at her apartment, the sharp sting of humiliation had dulled, replaced by something fragile but warm, hope. In the days after the auction, Danielle found herself replaying Matthew's words over and over. They tell me you've lived through fire and came out stronger. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to her like that, without pity, without hesitation. The idea that someone as remarkable as Matthew could see her as extraordinary still felt unreal, but it was starting to sink in piece by piece. And she realized something. The real battle wasn't with the world, or with the women who whispered behind their champagne glasses. It was with herself. The commission for Matthew was nearly complete now. It was a painting unlike anything she had done before, a woman standing at the edge of a storm, her back to the chaos, her face turned toward the light breaking through the clouds. Every stroke of her brush was a declaration, a quiet rebellion against the years she had hidden away. When Matthew came to her studio that Friday evening, she was nervous. It's done, she said, stepping aside so he could see the canvas. He stared at it for a long moment, silent, then he turned to her, his expression unreadable. It's breathtaking, he said finally. Danielle, this isn't just art, this is you. Her throat tightened. I guess it is. 2 weeks later, Matthew invited her to another event. This time he was vague about the details. Just trust me, he'd said over the phone. She arrived at the Sterling Grand Ballroom to find it transformed. The chandeliers glowed warmly. Music floated through the air and along the walls. Every single piece displayed belonged to one artist. Her. She froze. Matthew, what is this? He stepped beside her, his smile soft. Your first solo exhibition. I rented the space, reached out to collectors, critics, and friends. They're all here to see you. Her pulse quickened. I don't know what to say. Say yes when they ask to buy your paintings. He teased lightly, then grew serious. You deserve this, Danielle. You've been hiding for far too long. As the evening unfolded, she found herself speaking with art lovers, journalists, even gallery owners, all of them genuinely interested in her work. For the first time, she wasn't shrinking under their gazes. She was meeting them head-on. Midway through the night, Matthew took the stage. The room quieted instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady and rich, "we are here tonight to celebrate the incredible talent of Danielle Carter, a woman whose art has not only captured the beauty of the world, but the strength of the human spirit." Danielle felt heat rush to her cheeks, but she couldn't look away. "I know some of you might be wondering," he continued, "why her paintings feel so alive. It's because they are born from a heart that has faced fire and refused to be consumed by it." His eyes found hers across the crowd. "Danielle is the most courageous, beautiful woman I have ever known, and I am honored to stand here tonight and say that I love her." A ripple of surprise moved through the room, followed by applause, genuine and warm. Danielle's vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. After his speech, Matthew crossed the stage and came straight to her. "You okay?" he asked softly. She laughed through her tears. "You just told a room full of strangers you love me. I think I'm allowed to cry." He cupped her face, both sides, scars and all, and kissed her, slow and certain. When the night wound down, they returned to her studio. The city outside was quiet. The only sound the hum of the radiator and the soft rustle of canvas as she uncovered the commission he had inspired. "Keep it," she told him. "It belongs to you." He shook his head. "It belongs to us." She smiled, really smiled, and for the first time in years, she didn't think about how her face looked when she did. Months later, Danielle's work was hanging in galleries across the city. She still caught the occasional stare from strangers on the street, but it didn't sting the way it used to. Because now when she looked in the mirror, she didn't see only the scars. She saw the woman who had stood in the storm and turned toward the light. And every time Matthew walked into her studio, wrapping his arms around her from behind, she was reminded of something she had once believed impossible, that love, real love, had nothing to do with flawless skin or perfect symmetry. It was about seeing and being seen completely. Thank you for experiencing Danielle and Matthew's journey with me. Your support means the world. And I hope their story reminded you that true love sees beyond appearances, scars, and insecurities. Every like, comment, and share helps spread a message of hope, self-acceptance, and the beauty of love that conquers all. With love and gratitude, Vintage Mike Tales.